Hey friends and family, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com. Welcome back to my tarot channel. I appreciate you being here. I rarely ask, I rarely remember to ask, but if you could give me a thumbs up for this video if you like it, and subscribe if you haven't already, I'd really appreciate it because it helps me keep buying some decks. It doesn't help a lot, but it helps a little bit. And being able to purchase new decks sustains me in this channel, since I'm currently only working through my business at tarotclarity.com. At any rate, one of my viewers not too long ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, asked me how I can identify who is who in the court cards when they appear in the spread. Now, one of the things that you have to do in learning tarot is clearly have an understanding of who each of the court cards are, what their personalities are. Now, this is something that means more if it comes from within yourself. I do have a whole segment, probably an hour-long segment on how to identify court cards in my tarot lessons, which you can access through my website. If you go to the About page on my YouTube channel, it will also link you to purchasing a tarot reading and or my lessons. Now, I don't usually plug myself, but every now and then it's probably not a bad idea. But at any rate, I have a whole section of how to identify who it is that's being represented in the court cards. And you just have to come to, if you don't have your own ideas, or if you're struggling with it, taking a course with someone, doesn't have to be me, that teaches that, might not be a bad place to start. Now, I'm not going to do a whole lesson here because it's not fair to the people who pay for my lessons. And although I give a lot for free here, I give more. I give more in my lessons. At any rate, that's number one. You just have to have an understanding of who these people are, so that when they appear in a spread, you understand the personality trait. You understand who it represents. Now, if you're asking a question about yourself and another friend, okay? So the question is about yourself, and it involves another person. So you'd have to have an understanding of which card would represent you and which card would represent the other person. And if none of the court cards that represent either of you pop up, see how many cards from the suits that relate to the suit you identify with, or the suit that you identify your friend with. If say you identify personally with the suit of swords, and your friend is the suit of cups. If there are no court cards, but there's an overwhelming amount of cup cards, it may be suggestive of how that individual is feeling, or what their role in the circumstances are. It can mean other things as well, because tarot cards can mean more than one thing inside a reading. Now, what I've done is I've just have 2 decks here. I'm displaying the court cards of 2 decks. I don't know how long this video is going to be. It's probably going to be about a 40-minute video. One deck is the Ancient Italian Tarot by Lo Scarabeo, and the other one is the Golden Tarot of Marseille, also by Lo Scarabeo. I'm using these as demonstration because you don't have to spend a lot of money on tarot. Yes, the fine handmade tarot decks and the fine, crafted tarot decks can cost upwards of $100 and more. However, you don't have to have those kinds of decks in order to have a quality reading. And these 2 decks are decks that I think are very nice, and they're very inexpensive, under $30. It used to be you could buy a tarot deck for $2 or $3, but not anymore. So let us do a side-by-side comparison to see how the courts from different decks themselves might vary. Okay, so let's take a peek at the page, or the valet, of the suit of swords. the differences between these two, right? One is an older gentleman. He's got a mustache. This one looks more like a youngster, a young preteen, more in keeping with who they really did represent in the day. You'll notice that this young man is wearing ermine. He's got an ermine trimmed cape. So he is probably someone who's dashing or is, aside from looking at the page of swords and having a general identification method for the page of swords, you will see that both of them are different, right? So there are other clues besides having a concrete understanding of who they are, right? So this is in addition to having an understanding of what the page of swords could represent. Now, this particular page of swords, he's kind of like a dandy. He's got a feather in his hat, so does this one, but he's got ermine in his coat. And the king of the same suit doesn't even have ermine in his coat. So this young guy, is flashy. So he's, in addition to understanding what the page of swords might represent, that's just like an additional element. He appreciates finer things, right? This guy is no slack. He also has feathers in his hat. He looks well put together. They both show their weapons, so they're both prepared. The suit of swords, the courts from the suit of swords are people who are prepared. If their sword is unsheathed, right, they're ready. They're quick thinkers. If you're going to get into a tongue lashing or a tongue debate, they'll probably win unless you're a higher ranking court card of the same suit. Both of these young men are active, fully engaged. They're not talking about doing something. They're engaged in doing something. They're involved. They could be relaying, doing somebody's bidding, because after all, the knights did the bidding of the king and queen. So they're actively engaged in the bidding of something. So if you're asking, did my friend betray me? Right? And you identify your friend as a knight of this suit, then this could suggest that they're actively engaged in something. It could be that they're actively engaged in whatever thing that you suspected they might have been in. But they could also be actively engaged in defending you as well. So you have to be clear in your question. If you ask, is my friend loyal? Then if this card were to pop up, I would say yes, right? Because, not that you're a king and queen, but they're being loyal to someone. And so that person, in the context of the question, would be you. But if you ask if they're actively engaged in betraying you, and that's a good chance, if this pops up, that they might be. Here we have the queen. She, of the other deck, she also has a cloak of ermine, as does her king. I don't think the lesser courts of that same suit had ermine. So their high rank, the woman here, she's a woman of high stature if she has ermine, right? It's just a higher ranking fur, higher quality fur. But at any rate, this woman might be someone who is, accustomed to finer things. She likes finer things. This woman, it might just satisfy the qualities that you've assigned to the Queen of Swords. But the extra embellishment of the detail of an ermine jacket might just, give her a little extra panache. Now, how do you know if you're talking about, if the card references you or your friend, if you're a woman? Well, who's the question about? If you're answering in the context of the question, if you're asking an action question, is my friend doing this or that, right? If it pops up, if a woman pops up, chances are it's her, because you're not asking the question about you. You're asking the verb question. The action person is your friend. So if this pops up, I would say it's referencing your friend. Now you see, more so in this one than in this one. This queen, she's like ready. I mean, she's just not holding the sword in a static position. I mean, she's ready to take action. You know, it's tilted and it's like animate. This one too, to a lesser degree. And you see here, her hand is towards her heart. So something that she's engaged in, you know, the conversation is something that's close to her heart, where she gets very emotional about. So if it was surrounded by cards from the Suit of Cups, that would be a clue that it's a very emotional thing. And then the king. Again, we have a king wearing ermine here, and no such accoutrements in this king. This king doesn't have to be engaged in action. Just one look from this guy and you know not to mess with him, right? He's got the sword, he's not afraid to use it, but he doesn't have to. But because he commands that much respect. And I would say the same thing with this guy. Although this guy is looking to the side, he's perhaps not as, what's the word, when someone is approachable, right? You could see yourself going up to this guy and expressing a concern, and that he'd listen. He's taken time out. His hand is on his knee. He'll listen. Don't waste his time, but he'll listen. This king, you don't get that many clues. You know, it might be more helpful to have an understanding of what the King of Swords represents to you, but you could still take clues from the card. It's just that this one more readily gives me clues, I feel, than this card. Now, say the same question. Is my friend betraying me? Right? And say you're both women. But then this card pops up, and it's neither of you. Now, sometimes cards are, don't have to be gender specific. This could represent a woman just as easily as these cards could represent, the queens could represent men. But my rule of thumb is if a masculine card pops up and there's more cards from the Suit of Swords and batons, which are masculine, then it's a pretty heavy indicator that it probably represents men, right? It probably represents a man. And maybe, especially if it's a question about is my friend betraying me at work, it's possible she's gone to a person in a position of authority who's listening. He's all ears. So this card doesn't necessarily have to represent either you or your friend, but perhaps the person who's receiving the information. Here's a few more. So we have the Page of Cups, the Knight of Cups, the Queen of Cups, and the King of Cups. And then batons. Whoops. Same corresponding suits, different deck. I just cleared the reading table. I thought it was getting a little too hectic on the table. Okay, so let's say we have the same question and some of these court cards pop up. Is my friend, you're both women, betraying me? Well, we see somebody actively engaged in perhaps delivering a message. Remember, pages and knights did other people's biddings. The valets took care of the knights, and the knights did the bidding of the king and queen. So they all, the valets or pages and the knights could be delivering messages, right? That's part of what they could be doing. So in the context of the question, is my friend betraying me? If she's a subservient, particularly if it's like at work, or if she's a younger friend, right? There's a suggestion that, yeah, could be. She's delivering a message. She's bringing something to somebody, especially this one, actively engaged. Now this one, maybe not as actively engaged, but she could be. She might be considering it. The lid is off the top. Now here, it's clearly a lid. Oh, isn't that interesting? Here it's clear. I don't think that's a hat. Here it clearly looks like a lid, although that looks like a lid too. So it's very hard to tell if that's a hat or a lid. But the first way it struck me in this today is that this was a lid. So she's taking the lid off of something. So maybe like the cat out of the bag kind of thing. It's possible that the person is considering it. Now remember, valets and pages are younger, so they were or subservient. Now, if you're a person and you have a couple children and you're asking about your children, or if you're asking about one of your children, then clearly this would be about one of your children. But in the context of the question, it could be that even if your friend is 75 years old, this could be a very immature aspect of her. This could be a very petty, immature aspect. So just because it's a child or a younger individual doesn't mean that it can't represent some aspect of an older person. Remember the context of the question. If I have one legacy to leave behind with these videos, it's to answer the question, interpret the cards in the context of the question. If I'm famous for one thing, that would be good. You know. Okay, here. If it's emotional and this card shows up, yep. Either case. Yep, I think so. This individual is actively engaged in something. Now, notice here that does seem to be the lid, because there is no other object that could be a lid. So I'm guessing this was a hat. That was his hat, because he has his wreath on, and many of the other decks in general that you see like this, and I've spoken about at length, and I'm kind of going off on a tangent here. See here, he's got his hat and his wreath on his head, or his little bandana, or whatever that thing is. So yeah, if it's something that could be embarrassing, if it's something that's just gossipy, yep. Now, here, I would think if this one showed up and you're asking about your friend, I think she's keeping it a secret. I think she's a woman of restraint. She's emotional. And she understands the importance of loyalty. And the lid is tight. And she's not actively engaged in anything. And if anything, she's engaged in listening. She's not speaking. Again, neither of you are men, and I would, unless there's like suits of swords and batons where we have a lot of male energy, this could represent an aspect of your friend. If she's in a position of authority, she's not talking. Well, the lids, however, you see the lids are open. The tops are open. You don't become the king. You don't become the highest ranking individual in an outfit because you talk too much. True people in power, they're really good listeners. Knowledge is power, and the less said, the better for you, right? One thing, if you're going to talk to an attorney or you're going to talk to a person in law enforcement, answer the question. If it doesn't answer the question, it's superfluous. Right? The more you say, the more trouble you get into. Just speak the truth or speak to answer the question. Now, if this popped up and you're asking a question about your friend, is my friend betraying me? There could be somebody who's eager to hear it. You know, if your friend was willing to tell this guy, there is someone who's an Achilles heel that she needs to be careful near. And it depends on what other cards are. But there is somebody who would be receptive and would listen, and it would be this guy if he popped up. And let's take a look at the last group of courts. The suit. There's two more suits. The suit of batons and then the suit of coins will come next. Is my friend betraying me? Well, if this popped up, there's nothing here that would indicate that your friend is doing anything. This guy might be listening. He might be observing, right? So if your friend tends to be harmless but talk too much, she needs to take care not to talk too much in front of this individual or in front of this one. The kings that I mentioned already, the King of Cups, and maybe some of the others. But the ones who are listening and observing, they're the ones you have to take care of, even for yourself. If you have something and you want to know if you can trust somebody, there's always somebody who's listening. Always. And oftentimes it's the younger people because they're impressionable. I got these out of order somehow. So I wouldn't necessarily think that either of these represented your friend or you. But in the context of the question, and depending on what some of the other cards might be suggesting, this person could be a gossiper, could be somebody who's very charismatic, people pay attention to, full of stories, right? Now, if your friend is about to attend a big gala or a big party, for example, and you're afraid of them letting something loose at this party, maybe you want to sit down and have a chat with her because, this individual is somebody who is very charismatic, maybe likes to talk, and maybe she just needs to take care not to talk to him because maybe he can't be trusted. My understanding of this card, this court card, is that he's the least dependable in the deck. A promise kept by this guy, I don't think it means much. And here. Now this, like the Queen of like the Queen of Cups, this woman looks like she'd defend you. You just try talking about my friend to me and see what happens. I get the same feeling from him. You'll notice that both of these are looking away. So take note in the reading who they're looking at. Maybe it's somebody, it could be across like this way, or it could be, in her case, somebody who's down here. Take note of who they're looking at. Sometimes it's, sometimes they're just looking directly at you, the directly at the person. But if they are looking, if they're glancing to the side, take note of who or what card they're looking at. That's another thing too. Now, okay, both of these cards are the suit of batons, right? So the suit of batons is a fiery, for me, and you might identify them differently. But for me, they're very charismatic people. By the time they're queens and kings, they're more mature than the knights and the pages of their suit. By the time they've reached this point, they have a past, and it's probably pretty colorful, but they are mature now. They're not as prone to gossip or exaggeration, but they might. They might also be inclined to listen to the gossip. They might not repeat it, but they might listen. And the last suit, the suit of coins. Now for me, the suit of coins represents the most stable of the personalities. Even the knight is not in a gallop, at least not in this deck, where the others are a little bit more. Now this one's not so bad. Yeah, you should do with the knights, look at the posture of the horse to see at what level of activity they're in. You'll notice that in all of them, except the king, there's a coin at eye level, right? These three have their eyes on the prize. This guy has the prize. He doesn't need to look for the prize. Now, if the question again is, can my friend be trusted? Yeah, I think so. She's not going to betray you. Her eye is on the prize. She might listen and then come back and tell you if somebody said something, but I don't think she's going to speak it. Again, it depends on the context and the nature of the other cards in the spread. And if it would be helpful to you, I'll do a quick spread to see if any court cards pop up with the same question. Okay, here. And here the king has his eye on the prize, as well as in possession of the prize right here. This is a solid suit. They may be a little money hungry. They may be a little, materialistic. But loose lips didn't get them to the top of the heap. That's not how you get to the top, right? Okay, so I'm going to do a reading. I'll come up with a specific reading, very, very specific. And we'll take a look, and hopefully a few court cards will pop up, and we'll be able to see what they could represent in the reading regarding your friend. Okay, so I went into my meditative place. I put out to the universe that although this is a demonstration reading with no particular individuals in mind, it could relate to some of you who are watching. This is the kind of question that's always relative. And so in that regard, if this is a question that can help you, this is intended for you. Okay, so the question is, two women, and I put it into the cards that it's a work-related kind of incident. Something went down in the job the other day. It kind of got messy. You're wondering if your friend is going to betray you. And you're just curious. And this is a 6-card spread. We may or may not do quintessential cards. Okay, so an elevated nature, something of an elevated nature. The Eight of Swords, tense. There's some tension, okay? So certainly if you have this question, it's eating you up. It's kind of, disturbing to you. Five of Coins. So there's this, if coins are stable, they're steady, but it's an uneven number. It's a 5. Could suggest something happening, that the equilibrium, which is, if this was a 4 of Coins, I would say, oh, it's a very stable situation. But the equilibrium could be changing to some degree. It might not be as dramatic as you have it in your mind, but there's still something. Wow, a 10 of Batons. Okay, let's see what the other cards are. Wow, okay, so we have court cards, but we do not have any queens. We have an individual in authority. We have someone who's in a lesser position. And then we have a fool who perhaps speaks before he thinks in the context of this question. Could it be that your friend is in a position to say something to somebody in a position of authority? Is your friend known to be petty? The suit of coins is not typically someone who's petty, but it is surrounded, by a few air cards. It is surrounded by air here, and we have fire up here. Now, if your friend is in charge, if your friend is the boss, right? And someone's coming to her with information or something, I don't see that this person would necessarily betray you. However, if your friend is the subservient and you fear that she might be going to the boss, then there's a chance that your friend is seeking the audience of the boss. Now, will your friend be speaking? Well, guess what? The quintessential card for this row is 0, because I don't count the courts, and the Fool has no value. So it's possible in the context of this question that it's possible that loose lips sink ships. It's possible that your friend might go to the boss and speak to the boss on a topic. Now, I know I contradicted myself when I said the suit of coins is the least likely to betray, but he's a low-ranking character. He's not the queen or the king. He didn't get to the top. He's figuring his way out. I think he's less inclined to betray a person, but as I mentioned, he's surrounded by, we have air right here. We have a high card of the suit of air. Now, batons on earth, they don't really offset one another. It doesn't necessarily bring out the worst qualities in this guy. But here, this combination could suggest that he could be, I'm talking about him, but it could be representing your friend. Your friend could be, I'd be concerned. I'd kind of make amends as quick as I could with my friend, because it seems as though there's something of high concern, high tension, probably more dramatic in your own mind than it is in real life. Something will upset the apple cart. Okay, remember, this is the suit of coins, just like him. So somebody from the suit of coins could be upsetting the apple cart to some degree. The 10 of batons suggests to me a social setting, so it could represent the workplace, corporate. And here, as I mentioned, maybe your friend is having a weak moment, just having a weak moment. The quintessential card for the whole spread, since this row is 0, would come from here. So we'd have 8 and 5 is 13. 13 and 10 is 23. Minus 22 would be 1, which would be the magician card, or the bateleur. And the bateleur, again, suggests an individual who is kind of deceptive. So the quint card for the entire spread kind of reinforces the idea that, yeah, there could be something deceptive going on regarding your friend. And neither of these cards are women. But they don't have to be. They could just be addressing the attributes of the individual. And I don't think it's going to go down as a terrible, terrible, terrible thing. The King of Swords is listening, but not necessarily going to act. He might, or she. But it might also be something that he considers the source and sees it as a petty thing. And it might not really concern himself with it too much. But it would be a good wake-up call, if I were in your shoes, to perhaps tighten up my lips when I confide in that individual. Okay, friends, I hope this video has been helpful to you. Until next time, peace, stay well. And I'm going to start adding an additional request. Be kind. Please be kind. When you're in a situation to do the right thing, or to take an extra 30 seconds to be kind or generous, please take that time to do it. Till next time, friends.